Good day, and I hope everybody is having a good time in my class. Today what we're going to look at is how to make a timeline. This is going to be a very simple linear timeline going left to right, talking about the first several presidents of the early 1900s. In order to do this, we need to first identify who these presidents were. So I have off to the side here on a piece of paper the first several presidents, starting with Theodore Roosevelt, who became president in 1901. Now that we've got our information listed down that we want to put on our timeline, let's make the actual line itself. First, what we need to do is obviously make a simple linear line. Timelines go from left to right. A standard timeline goes from left to right, but you can get timelines that actually go up and down. I've seen some that go in circles, others that go in spirals. You can make your timeline however you want, but the general thing is that it has a starting point and an ending point. Usually the oldest stuff is on the left or on the top, and the newer stuff is on the right or on the bottom. Once you've made your lines, you need to create also your start and your end time, so your starting points and your end points. It gets kind of confusing when you're getting into the timeline before the year of zero. So when you're talking about BCE or before current era, it looks kind of backwards. Typically, the line gets larger as you go from left to right. But if you're talking BC, it actually is kind of backwards. Think of a number line. The further left you go in the negative, the higher the number gets the further left you go when you're in the negative. And it's the same thing for BCE. But we're talking about 1900. So why don't we identify our left year here. You typically want to give yourself some wiggle room. So because Roosevelt became president in 1900, we're going to give him some wiggle room here. We're just going to say 1900 is where our line starts. And we're going to end our line at 1950. We're not going to get through all the presidents, obviously, but this will give us kind of an idea, basically, of how to make the line. So, we have 1900 on the left and 1950 on the right. We want to divide our timeline into equal portions so that we can identify when we make our events where they go on the line. And the easiest way to do this is to just split your timeline into halves, and then quarters, and then to eighths, and then to sixteenths, or whatever. So that's kind of where we're going to start. If you look at our timeline, you can kind of figure out the halfway point is right about here. Okay. Well, if we're starting at the year 1900, and it ends at the year 1950, what is the center line going to be? Well, you should be able to figure this out quite easily. It's 1925, right? That's the halfway point. Now, to figure out the halfway points of those, or the quarter points, we simply cut those in half as well. One there, and one right about there. Well, 1900, 1925. What would be the halfway point of that? Well, half of 25 years is actually 12 and a half. We don't need to necessarily put the half year in there, but we can be close. So we'll just put 1912. Not to say you don't have to put the half in there, you can, but you don't usually have to. If you're talking about days or dates or specific time periods like that, you certainly could if you want to get that detailed, but in our case, it's not really required. On the right side, between 1925 and 1950, we need to find that middle point in that middle year. So, we know that there's a 25-year difference between here. Well, half of 25 years is, again, 12 and a half. So we just need to add 1925 plus 12, which is 1937. All right? And we can continue to break it up even more. Between 1900 and 1912, that's 12 years, and the middle would be 6 years. Between 1912 and 1925, again, that's 12, and the middle would be 6 years. And so on and so forth. Between here and here, these 6 years is 3 years. You're just making a very even number line. Now, when you do this, I strongly recommend you make this number line, or these marks rather, in pencil, because you're not necessarily going to need them. They're mostly just used for reference points, so that you know about where these things are when you reference your events. Alright, now that we have our number line broken up, it's broken up by every 3 years. So here's 3, here's 1900, 1903, 1906, 1909, 1912. It's broken up by 3s. It kind of gives us an idea of where we're going to put our stuff. So our first president that we're going to take a look at is, as I mentioned earlier, Theodore Roosevelt. Now he didn't start in 1900, he started in 1901. So we're going to find that line right where we think 1901 would be, which is probably right about there. Simply draw a line up from where that year is and identify what's there. So in this case, Theodore Roosevelt, who started in 1901. So now it's obvious to see that in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt became president. After that, now we can look at our next president, William Taft. William Taft became president in 1909. Well, this one's actually going to fall on our 9 year right here. So we can actually draw our red line and illustrate or inform our people, whoops, it's supposed to be red, but it's blue, that William Taft was president in 1909. Our next person was Woodrow Wilson in 1913. Here's 12. Here's 15. So in 1913, which is right after 12, obviously, we can add Woodrow Wilson. And you continue doing this on and on and on until you get all of the people you're looking for on your line in the correct areas. 1921, so here's 1912, 1915, 1918, if I'm doing my math right, 12, 15, 18, 21, William Harding right here. Now you see what's happening here is I'm running out of room, so be aware of that. You need to usually give yourself some extra space in order to get all the people in there that you want to get in there. Warren Harding, 1923. Alright. So on and so forth. If anybody has any questions about creating their own timeline, feel free to let me know and I'll be more than willing to help you. Again, kind of as a reminder, as you're drawing these lines to identify, in this case, the presidents, you might want to give them a little high note because you know you're going to lose space. You can make them straight up and over, make them angled and over. You can even go use the downside if you want. Try not to confuse the bottom lines with the top lines. The other thing to remember is, in the end, make sure that you are erasing, if you feel you need to, these extra lines that are not necessary as part of your timeline. You can keep them there, but it gets kind of cluttered after a while, and some people just feel like getting rid of those extra lines if they're not necessary. Other than that, we're good. Feel free to give me a text or an email if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you again in class. Have a great day.